Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Shiloh, and I'm here with...
Hi, I'm Phoebe Judge, and this is Criminal.
Oh, my God.
No, it's not. This is Dr. Scott, and you are here at LA
Not So
Confidential. Welcome back. Wow.
So, Criminal.
So, look, the reason I did that obnoxiously, because I really love Phoebe Judge. I really do. I'd love to meet her sometime. Kind of have a fanboy crush on her. Criminal, which is an amazing podcast, their very first episode was something that I had found while I was listening to This American Life on podcasts.
Oh, okay.
And the first episode was about what we're going to be discussing today, which is the staircase.
Right. And don't roll your eyes at yet another podcast episode about the staircase. I get it. I'm sort of over it in those ways as well, but we're going to touch on a lot of psychological issues. Yeah,
but here's what happens, folks, because now in order to prep for this episode of what Shiloh and I, what our perspective on this is, I have found that I was exhausted by watching the entire documentary because it's a lot.
It is.
And now, as I have gone and done more research, I'm going back and watching it multiple times because there's so much that comes out. And so many more questions that are raised. I mean, now it's fascinating to me in a completely different way.
Yes.
But
that first episode of Criminal...
Right. So, thank you. So, Criminal, at least the way it was set up at the beginning, and there were some variants as the episodes came out, Criminal, Phoebe boiled all of her stories down to a really tight, intense 20 minutes. And what was presented, because I was not familiar with this particular case.
Me either.
Was what's called the owl theory. So, look, if you're here at LA Not So Confidential, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this case. Yeah. You give the basic, and then I'll jump in.
Of the owl theory?
No, give the basic of the K, like what it is.
Okay. So, just as the crime itself, there's a happily married, well-to-do couple in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Husband and wife are out by the pool one night after downing a couple bottles of wine, and she goes in to turn in for bed, and he comes in sometime later and finds her at the bottom of the stairs, barely breathing, tons of blood everywhere, and subsequently he's arrested and convicted for her murder.
Yes. So that's the very condensed Reader's Digest version of it. And what you find when you get into watching the documentary or getting into this case, if you read any of the multiple books on it, is that there's a lot of information. But one of the things that came up as a possibility, an alternative theory, which I'll talk about my evolution with it in a moment, but Phoebe talked about what's called the owl theory, that this woman, by the way, this is a beautiful house, a beautiful, expansive house with it looks like an estate,
right.
I mean, especially compared to us out here in California.
Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah, beautiful. And there was a very large balcony that led into a small landing with a staircase that looked kind of like a staircase that would be leading into a butler's pantry. So there's a series of entries and landings, and then there's a staircase down.
Very narrow.
Right. So they're in a semi-rural area with a lot of wildlife, and the theory is that while she was walking in, she was attacked by a huge owl. And the owl, with its talons, gripped her by the back of the head, caused massive injuries, massive blood loss, and in her attempt and her fear to try and get it off her head, she stumbled down the stairs, hitting each wall as she went down and really making an enormous mess at the bottom.
We all know
she made an enormous mess. But
how much the head bleeds
exactly
when you cut it.
And when you see the crime scene photos, it's pretty brutal.
Right.
But the way the theory came up is Michael Peterson, who has great support from a number of people. You know, the community was very divided on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
But one of his neighbors, in looking through the evidence, found a piece of evidence, a microscopic pin feather from an owl that no one else had seen. Then they later found additional pin feathers from the owl. And that led to this revelation that several people in that area had been basically chased and attacked by one or more really large, I think they were barn owls.
I think so too.
Who have incredibly strong talons.
Right.
I mean, they are predators. They are apex predators for fowl in that area.
They pick up large animals.
Exactly. So it sounded, when I first heard it on Criminal, I thought, no, that kind of sounds like that's a plausible theory.
Sure, I think it makes sense, and it was made into such a joke once it came out.
And then the more you listen to it, you realize, no, this is not a joke. Why is that evidence there? And then there are a couple of other things that we'll get to later that you go, when you're watching the documentary, you go, oh, yeah, that's completely possible. But the idea that it was completely overlooked and discounted, like it wasn't even a part of the original trial.
Right. Well, so the owl theory isn't covered in the documentary at all. So I found that really interesting because, yes, I hear this Criminal episode. That's how I first hear about this case. And then this documentary comes out on Netflix. And I'm waiting for the owl theory part to happen. And I'm telling friends who are watching it, oh, just wait till you hear the owl theory if you haven't. But it never comes up because it was so recent. So basically, a lot of people question, how the heck is there a film crew there so quickly? Because they are filming the forensic experts looking at the blood that is still covering the stairs. And I finally found an article. I mean, even Reddit didn't have the answer, and they have the answer to everything.
Reddit knows everything.
But basically, Michael Peterson's attorney, last name of Rudolph, he got a call from Court TV, and Court TV had received a call from this French film crew who had done other documentaries on American crime stories. And they say, hey, do you have anything juicy for us? We're looking to do our next one. And Court TV said, well, contact this attorney. He may know something. And it just so happened that he had just picked up the Peterson case. So he sort of introduced it to Peterson. The film crew actually wanted to film pretty equally the prosecution and the defense. And the prosecution was on board for about the first 4 months, and then they stopped collaborative shooting with them. So that's why it sort of takes the turn of just really kind of telling the story from Peterson's
So wait, it was only for
perspective.
4 months? For that, because the first initial 8 episodes spans
3
several
years.
time periods, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first 4 months is when the prosecution said, yes, we'll let you film us too.
Okay.
But then they stopped working with them at some point.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later on.
Sure.
You can tell why they stopped it, because the prosecution looked like idiots.
Yeah.
They really looked like idiots.
So the original first 8 episodes spans year 2001 to 2004. And that was originally put together as a documentary, and that was shown at Sundance. And then in 2010, there was a follow-up done. And then just last year, there were 3 more episodes produced. So all of this together is now what's on Netflix as The Staircase.
And there's a lot of, I mean, I'll also go, if you do a search on iTunes or any of our great platforms that we're on, there are many crime and crime-related podcasts that have done episodes on The Staircase. So once again, we're hoping not to, we're not listening to a lot of, like I listen to Real Crime Profile, which I think is awesome. But I didn't specifically listen to these episodes because you and I have a particular perspective which really relates to human behavior and the legal processes that from a psychology perspective,
Right.
which is, that's obviously that's what we do here.
Sure.
So we're going to be going on a couple of tangents here. I hope you'll I'll try not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but there's a couple of things that I found really fascinating that I think really were not looked at all.
So just with, those initial episodes that were done, Michael Peterson is found guilty, like I said, and he spends 8 years in prison. And then in 2010, when they do the follow-up, that all came about because one of the forensic experts was found to be incompetent. One of the main star witnesses of the prosecution.
Which, by the way, I have to give, as frustrated as I can be with the legal system at times on both sides, because my job has me seeing both sides of the process, basically, 40 hours a week. In this time, I really thought that justice was done, because not only for Michael Peterson, because I'll say justice was done procedurally, because I still don't know whether or not he's guilty. I really don't. And I get more unsure the deeper I go into all this stuff. But it's horrific that this expert promoted such false material. And how many cases was it that they had to go back and basically...
I want to say it was around 80, but I cannot remember.
Yeah, and talk about, one of the big problems they have with Peterson during this whole process is, the prosecution just sets him up as someone who fabricates and lives a fantasy life and lies. And then you turn around and get to episode 6, maybe, and you find out that, what's the guy's name? What was the expert's name?
The last name's Deaver.
Deaver, okay. Yeah. You find out Deaver was lying about everything. He lied about his training. He lied about his supposed, I'm using air quotes here, his mentorship, where they interviewed the mentor. The mentor's going,
he didn't work on that many cases. He didn't
work on the cases. I think I talked to him casually for 20 minutes one time.
Right.
That was...
But he comes off as a really great witness.
Oh, he's great on the stand. He's very really confident, good. Very sure of himself. And that's frightening.
It is.
Because
really
how many other people are out there in that position of expert, having that influence?
Yeah. So after he gets this retrial, he could have opted to go through trial again. But instead, what they did is he offered an Alford plea. So essentially, he pleads to manslaughter. He is considered a felon, but he can also declare his innocence. So he doesn't have to plead guilty, but it's called an Alford plea. So basically, it's like, okay, time served. You've been in prison for 8 years.
It's I think the way they describe it, and they describe it several times, and Michael has a real strong reaction to it, which is very interesting too, is that the Alford plea is basically saying, you have enough evidence to convict me, or you don't. I'm misspeaking. You don't have enough evidence to convict me, but I am pleading guilty, although I am maintaining my innocence.
Yeah, and so you don't have to risk going through another trial,
right?
And maybe being found guilty,
right? So he ended up getting time served, which he'd already done a lot of time, and he walked away.
Completely indigent because...
And with nothing.
No money.
Yeah, wiped out.
No money. But, okay, so that's a little breakdown of the case. I want to get into all of the sort of players in the case, because this is a complicated family tree, and we are going to talk a little bit about the psyche of family members of individuals who are going through the criminal justice system. So I think it's important for us to just sort of talk about the characters. So... Michael Peterson, he was originally married to a woman named Patty, and they got married in 1966. He went off to Vietnam. She went off to teach in Germany. She taught on the base there, the military base. So he comes back from Vietnam, and then he joins her in Germany. So when he joins her in Germany, they live a few houses down from another couple. That couple is George and Elizabeth Ratliff. And Elizabeth and Patty both teach together. And then George and Michael hit it off because they were both captains in the military. Michael with the Marines and George with the Air Force. So they make this couple, Michael and Patty. They have 2 sons, Clayton and Todd. And then George and Elizabeth have 2 daughters, Margaret and Martha. So George goes back into combat in the military, and he ends up dying while serving in 1983. So now, Patty and Michael are kind of with Elizabeth a lot, helping her with the kids. They go over, they all have sort of like family dinners together. Michael might stay behind and help clean up the dishes and tuck in the kids, while Patty takes their own children back home and tucks them in for the night. So they sort of blend their families a little bit after George's death. Well, then just 2 years later, Elizabeth ends up dying. So she ends up dying in Germany, and Michael and Patty then adopt their 2 daughters. And both George and Elizabeth said that's what they wanted. That was in their wills because they were such tight families. So Michael and Patty take on Margaret and Martha, and then, of course, they already have their 2 boys, Clayton and Todd. And then eventually, Michael and Patty split up. So Patty stays in Germany. Michael comes back to the United States, and all 4 kids then end up living with Michael in the United States. So Michael then meets Kathleen, the woman that we talked about at the beginning that was found dead at the bottom of the stairs.
Very successful Nortel executive.
Yes.
Like, very, very successful.
So they meet in 1986. They move in together in 1989, and from all accounts, everyone said that she was really broken up over her last marriage, and Michael really helped her come out of that, and then they fall in love. And then Kathleen has her own biological daughter from her previous marriage, and her name is Caitlin. So the kids and Michael and Kathleen are living together. So you have Caitlin's biological daughter, you have the 2 daughters from
the Ratliff daughters,
and then Michael's own biological boys. And Michael and Kathleen are married for 13 years before she is found dead. And she dies in 2001. So it's kind of a mishmash. You have a lot of blended family here, but they show a lot of footage, like home videos and things in the documentary, that it really seemed to work. I mean, at some point, even, the girls that were adopted were so young when their parents died that when they come to the United States, they end up at some point calling Kathleen mom, once they're, finally teenagers, preteens. But Michael was definitely dad to them, and Kathleen was mom. And so essentially they lost 2 moms.
Yeah.
And a biological father. And then throughout this documentary, they're also dealing with, okay, now Dad, Michael, we might be losing him to incarceration.
Right. Which is going to come back to something we're going to discuss later about family members of people who were accused or convicted of crimes of this nature. One of the things that you're probably we're going to circle back around to this, but the interesting thing about the adopted daughter's biological mother is that her death was an accident in Germany on the base where they were living.
Right.
Her body was found at the bottom of a staircase.
Correct.
So as she had tripped, or there was there something else? There was a medical.
So right then and there, a doctor in Germany actually goes out to the scene, and he did a spinal tap on her and was able to call it as a cerebral hemorrhage right then and there. So his conclusion was that she had hemorrhaging in the brain, had a stroke essentially when she was going up the stairs. And her daughters, now grown, of course, they were very small back then, but it had been told to them that she was suffering from a lot of headaches leading up to that, but she wouldn't go to the doctor.
So interesting, and probably in the big picture of all this,
huge bombshell in the documentary.
Enormous bombshell, and, at best, it's a horrible coincidence.
Sure.
I mean, that's at best. At worst, it's somebody that's, killed someone 2 times.
Well, and so
also kind of done, like, it worked for me last time. I'll try
17 years ago. Michael's the last person to be seen with both of these women.
Right.
It's also speculated, was he having an affair with her? I still don't know what motive is, unless he was going to reveal it, because he ends up leaving his wife a year later anyway.
Right.
But yeah, let's talk about Michael a little bit more.
Yeah, I got to tell you my take on this. One of the things that got me really excited about talking about this is that I, myself, in my undergrad years, went through an experience with a family member who was on trial. And it was a completely new, exotic, unknown, and dangerous experience for our entire family. We did not know how to handle it. There was no one to lead us through this. And one of the things, I think this is reflective of the culture I come from in the southern United States, is that we were really taken aback at how many statements were made by the prosecution and the judge in this particular case of how the alleged criminal was devoid of emotion. Which, in the psych world, we use a term when you and I are doing evaluations of people. One of the first things that we always want to describe is a term called affect.
Right.
Affect, it's AFFECT. Affect is the physical presentation of emotional display in a person's face, in a person's expressions, in this way they use their body language. So it's a whole composite, a constellation of things that we look at in how someone's presenting.
And we're usually trying, as psychologists, is that matching up with the words that they're saying?
Right. Is it congruent or incongruent with what they're saying? If someone is saying, I'm terrified, but they have what's called a flat affect. Now, can someone be terrified and have a flat affect? They
100%.
absolutely can. Because there are so many other factors. When we think of the concentric circles of social influences of culture of origin, adopted culture, integrated culture, family culture, individually developed culture. I mean, that's like an incredible crucible right there of Venn diagrams and influences of how someone is going to present when they are under pressure.
Correct.
And I'll tell you, one of the most frustrating things is hearing pundits on television when they're commenting on people in trial. Well, she never wept a tear. So she either doesn't weep a tear, or look at those crocodile tears. And usually it's, and sorry, but it's usually some white guy investigator on the stand saying, "Oh yeah, he was like crying, but there were no tears." And now look, on the other side is we've all watched enough investigation discovery programs of live interviews when people are, and it's very clear, especially clear to me as a former casting director, when someone is acting. I mean, it's pretty clear. But what I don't like is this huge net that people are being drawn into, and potential judgment is being made on their character and their guilt based on what they're presenting within court. Court is an incredibly long process. And one of the things that we get really an altered perception of or perspective of is you watch TV, you watch Law and Order, and you think it all happens in 20 minutes. And it doesn't. It goes on for days, weeks,
the CSI
months.
effect.
Absolutely. It's the CSI effect. And you don't understand that it's boring. It's tedious. So on a physiological level, almost everybody involved, except for the attorneys, because this is what they do.
Right.
Everyone is at full adrenal burnout.
Right. And the attorneys are telling their client, don't give anything.
Yeah.
Just stay a blank slate so people don't make assumptions if they see something.
Yeah.
But then we interpret that as nothing.
Right. Oh, look, they're not expressing any emotions.
Yeah.
Oh, look, he's laughing. It's
right.
well, yeah, it's been 3 years since this supposed crime happened.
Right.
Everyone's exhausted. People are still human.
Yeah.
And they fall somewhere on that spectrum. So that's my long-winded rant of my frustration with this part of the legal process of how easily those kind of things are said.
Right.
But to take it back to what you're talking about, to sort of focus on Michael, look, Michael Peterson is odd. He is an odd duck.
Right.
He's not as odd as his ex-wife, the mother of his biological sons.
Yeah.
And I don't say this with any rancor. I don't say it with any judgment. I'm just saying, look, I'm gonna go a little crazy here, but there's a term that we use currently called uncanny valley. And uncanny valley is when, especially in the world of robotics, as we're moving more and more towards artificial intelligence and trying to engineer robotics and AI platforms that present as human. One of the things that we are neurologically wired to do is notice if something's wrong. Why do we have it? It's not a genetic predisposition. It's a biological imperative.
Right. That kind of part of the fight or flight system.
It protects you.
Sure.
Right? Because in the same way, out of your peripheral vision, you see, a quickly moving snake, your body is going to immediately react to it. We do the same thing when we pick up unconscious cues of disease.
Mm-hmm.
Like if, there's that thing that if you look at a dried lily pod, it has the holes in it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people can't look at it without getting nauseous.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Because it's not porphyria, that's the liver condition, but it's a phobia that most of the population has because we recognize it as disease.
Oh, that's
when there
crazy. I've never heard of that.
A number of holes. It looks like boils or cankers, which is gross. Okay, I'm sorry, we're not attention. Getting it back to the idea of uncanny valley is that, in the process of unconsciously judging other people when we encounter them, we have sort of like, think of a virtual scale like Lady Justice has. And as we're interacting with someone, we take bits and pieces of that interaction and we put them in the yay scale or the nay scale. Mm-hmm. So it's constantly going up and down. And we start to look at things like, is somebody looking at me too long?
Right.
Are they holding a gaze during conversation that's too intense and it lasts more than 1.5 seconds? Immediately someone's going to start going, okay, wait, how do I interpret that?
Right.
Now, I'm also talking that's happening lightning fast on an unconscious level.
Sure.
But look, Michael has this in spades. He walks around with a pipe, which is such an affectation. Like even 20 years ago, like really, like who was doing that? It's an affectation. He has a stilted manner of speaking that sort of speaks of his education, certainly, and he was a published writer with some success. I wouldn't say he was a hugely successful novelist,
but the way he speaks comes off,
it's stilted,
and also a little elaborative, as a writer,
right? So he, okay, pulling it back because there's so much of this. So we think about like unlikable qualities, people who constantly brag. That bugs people.
That's a turn off.
Bragging about yourself, talking primarily about yourself, unable to, have a sense of humor about how you present in the world, finding the downside in everything, giving backhanded or underwhelming compliments, contradicting people compulsively, arguing for no reason.
Yeah, now, I don't want to be around that person you just described.
Right, nobody does. And I'll say this, Michael doesn't really fall in that category. What he falls into is a category of what really was much more common in our society, which is just, he's an oddball. He's an eccentric.
Yes.
He is someone that you look at and you're like, oh, he's an interesting guy. He's a little bit of, I can relate to this because I get called Cliff Clavin.
Oh, yeah.
Who was it? The know-it-all? I'm always called the know-it-all from Cheers. So he's really educated. He kind of has an answer for everything.
Right.
Which I think makes people uncomfortable.
It makes people uncomfortable, and I think also back to his affect, kind of jokey and inappropriate at times with what he's, I guess what we would think, oh, how are you laughing at that when you're talking about your legal strategy? But he's in his home.
And once again, what we were talking about earlier, that saturation is like, okay, he's already been dealing with this. He's been dealing with the cops. He's been dealing with the public outcry and the, sort of already judging, and people get worn out by that. So that's another thing that, besides the eccentricity, we'll get to, because I wanted you to touch on that, another point later. the idea that, and I found this really fantastic in doing research on this, is there was an idea posited by a researcher that we are losing tolerance for eccentricity in our social structure. And that's been happening more and more over the last 65 years.
Wow.
Because of the advent of media. And certainly, think about it during the golden age of Hollywood, and Jean Harlow became a star, and then suddenly every woman was dyeing their hair platinum blonde and plucking their eyebrows, right? So we now live in an even more pressured society where people have Instagram models, and we look at this sort of physical perfection, and we have these ideals. And then we have people who push back against those ideals and create their own paradigm, which then becomes something that is standardized. So it's a reaction, but it is not odd or eccentric.
Right. It's just kind of a push and pull with the trend.
Right. And then we have people that purposely adopt. Like if you look at some of the more interesting, I'll use the term interesting, examples of hipsters that do these sort of outlandish costumes, but they're doing it ironically, as opposed to someone like a true eccentric, like the documentary Grey Gardens, which is eccentricity dialed up exponentially to the point where it becomes a pathology. Well, and once again, we're looking at a spectrum, right?
Right, and I know these are just two examples, but do we find that we kind of put people into that eccentric category who are wealthy? Because in some...
Well, I think that's a big part of it. Because I
feel like that's an element.
The more money you have, the weirder you can be, right? Because we talk about that. We talk about out here, and for some of my more high-profile clients in my private practice, we talk about the bubble of celebrity. If you're surrounded by people who are dependent on you for their paycheck, of course they're going to do nothing but say yes. They're never going to disagree with you.
Sure.
So even taking it away, we talk about the rich, some of the rich, Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes, he was brilliant and rich, and no one ever said no to him, and he wouldn't accept no from anyone.
Sure.
So he ended up just getting more and more strange.
Right.
So this is something that doesn't work well for Michael Peterson. Is his eccentricities, because you're watching this going, well, you're odd. And then it's revealed that he lied about so many things about his background.
Right.
So this is a guy who, yes, was in the war arena for Vietnam, but he was not the recipient of these medals that he said he was. That he presented.
He wasn't injured in the way that he said he was.
Exactly. He had an injury, but it was a non-combat related injury. But he presented it as something different. This is a guy that, does he have some narcissistic qualities? I don't know if I'd even use the word qualities. I would say he has some flavors. He has some flavors.
Traits. Yeah.
And he also, developmentally, and he grew up and became an adult during the 60s in a war arena where nobody's looking at that stuff.
Right.
You can't research who has and who doesn't have the medals. Now, when somebody tries to pull that crap, that's the first thing that Reddit gets on. Looking for it.
He tried to run for mayor. So, I think that's when some of the stuff might have been dug up. But I think it comes across on film as lack of insight and lack of being connected with, now I'm doing air quotes, the seriousness of what this is all supposed to be about. And that's why I find it fascinating, because we're getting to see how often do you get to see inside the home of someone that's going through a trial? You just see them sitting behind, a desk in a courtroom.
And maybe that's what's additionally off-putting, is how casual their discussions are. You see how casual their discussions are. You see that the attorneys are relaxed, that Michael's kind of
glib and joking about
they're glib about how but once again, we as the observer, not only are we seeing something that is in direct contrast to what we think a trial should look like, or preparation for a trial, because we don't usually see these background things like you're saying, but we're also then projecting our interpretation and our bias, onto those things. So I'm watching these scenes and I'm looking at the attorneys playfully cross-examining each other, and then like they come up to a point where, oh, this is going to illustrate what could possibly go wrong, but they all start laughing about it.
Right.
And maybe it's my bias because I've been through part of that process, so it was shocking to me. But the reality is, this is how it goes.
Well,
this is how you prepare for those
job
things.
to them.
Exactly, it's their job.
It's just like some of the gallows humor that we have and how we cope with our jobs as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's really interesting. Touching back on the narcissistic, flavors that he has, I found something on Reddit that I thought was hilarious and kind of pinpointed.
Oh, cool.
So, a whole piece of this, and that's why I wanted to touch on how this became a documentary to begin with, because lots of people were speculating that he hired this French film crew to kind of tape everything, and people are saying, well, that's actually one of the reasons why I maybe think he didn't do it, because what guilty person would say, come on in, film crew, and film everything? But this rebuttal on Reddit I thought was so great. I'm going to butcher this, but the person that wrote it is Zafiro Injiro. And he wrote, unless you were incredibly arrogant, thought you were so much cleverer than anyone else that you would never be convicted, and thought that you were so fascinating that your fascinatingness should be captured for posterity. That sums up a narcissistic personality. And
it does.
The jinx.
Yes, but what I would say, once again, I don't know. I still am on the fence about Michael Peterson, but he's
Robert
not
Durst
Robert
and
Durst.
The Jinx. Yeah,
he's not Robert Durst. I mean, that guy is.
Well, talk about a subject.
Yeah.
He's...
So there's some flavors there. There's some axes too. So there's some grandiosity. There's some expansiveness.
Mm-hmm.
But there are moments that you and I were talking about while we were prepping for the show that I missed the first time around. And they have as in most high profile cases like this, they had a coach.
Oh, right.
Someone who's there that I think is a fascinating job. This
you should do that.
Hippie-like guy comes in, and he's basically giving him theater exercises, trying to get him to loosen up because he's a very tight-shouldered, odd walk person. He's trying to get him to really be more human. And there's a moment where Michael starts talking about his caring for his ex-wife and the relationship, because he's describing these moments and the intimacy that they shared with each other, and it is the most genuine moment that you see out of him. And it's not an acting moment, like you can tell.
And the coach even says, you don't even have to say it. Just the fact that you would go there and answer my question is everything.
Yeah.
I think there's also something kind of going back to like his physical presentation. He has these wild eyebrows. Do you think he's had some sort of plastic surgery, or
he's a slender guy. Look, he looks
kind of built at the beginning, like he's taking care of himself.
He was in shape, which is another thing that comes up about his his sexuality later on. He's got some good genes.
Okay.
He's got a very sort of aquiline profile. He's got a prominent prominent nose and a strong jaw, although he's a small statured guy.
Right.
And he's in shape. But there's also, that goes back to the eccentricity. His teeth are incredibly stained by the pipe nicotine. And, that was one of the things that the attorneys are saying is like, shave. You're too old to have scruff.
Trim your eyebrows. Dress nice.
Get your hair cut. He's doing the whole Don Johnson Miami Vice thing, wearing a mock tee with a blazer or a mock turtleneck, and
it was 2003, not 1983.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's interesting that once again you use the term insight, and but that's not something particularly glaring, but it's a big piece, and a lot of people have to be coached on what to wear. I mean, I've been on a jury before, and I've been absolutely shocked at what people wear to court. Just really no insight about what the process is, or realizing that it's a serious thing.
Oh my gosh, we had I think I had a whole semester on being a possible expert and eyewitness, or not eyewitness, an expert called into court, and like what you wear, how you present yourself as a psychologist on the stand. And it kind of took me aback when I was watching the staircase that the medical examiner for the prosecution, she's up there wearing a sleeveless top. And I thought I would never wear a sleeveless top in court, especially when, as a doctor. But I don't know. It's the South. It's hot.
But, exactly. But here, I think it's just also something that people don't think about unless, our culture has moved away from more formal dressing. If you look at really cool old vintage photos from Hollywood in the 30s and 40s, everybody on the street, even lower income, is wearing a blazer and a hat.
Right.
Like that was just standard. That was uniform. You didn't walk around in your shirt sleeves. And I remember one of the things after I graduated from my doctoral program, I went back to my campus and I offered a 3-hour workshop on how to prepare for your interview for internship. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing to me that these incredibly smart people, talented people, didn't understand those basic things. You don't wear a sleeveless.
You don't wear your shiniest shirt.
You don't. You don't. And
right.
Some people that were not even aware of dental hygiene. Like, here's a wonderful clinician who's got bleeding gums, and I had to take her aside and go, we got to get you to a dentist before you go start interviewing.
These are the things people notice, and whether it's looking at a suspect or looking at somebody up on the stand, at some level you'd want to say, well, who cares what I wear? I'm smart. I know what I'm talking about. But that doesn't matter because people. In fact,
that probably affects more careers than anything else. Yeah. People just not understanding that you can't control all aspects of how someone's going to perceive you, but there are things that you can't do. So, Michael has some eccentricities, some oddities, which more and more in our society, I think, are less tolerated or thought as odd. I grew up in a time where, in the semi-rural South, if you had a mentally ill family member or and I use this term carefully, if you had a crazy family member, everybody knew about it. It was like the neighborhood looked out. And, if it was something that wasn't a violent or to anyone, it was just accepted. That's what it was.
Well, I remember just as a patrol officer, I can think of in the wealthier parts of the town that I worked in, the more eccentric people. And I thought they were fascinating. If they called us for something and going inside their house and seeing their artifacts that they brought back from their trip to Africa and just listening to them talk and just kind of, there's a sense of kind of worldliness to them sometimes. It depends, but just I've had some interactions that have been very positive and really neat. Yeah. Instead of thinking, oh, what's wrong with that guy?
Well, look how far we've gotten away from the idea of the old saying that, well, she walks to the beat of a different drummer.
Oh, right.
I think that used to be a lot more respected than it is now.
Right.
And maybe, there's also, it's a challenging time. Maybe there's not a lot of room for that, economics especially.
Right.
But, I think that's an important part, especially in the legal process, that people may not be prepared for in a way. So I wrote a note.
Oh, God.
One of the notes I wrote was, so here, I was telling you how I do this. So this is how
sometimes
I try and multitask.
Rewrite notes we shouldn't say out loud.
5 o'clock in the morning, I'm at Gold's Gym on the ellipse machine, watching documentaries on my iPad with my iPhone in my hand to leave.
Dictating to yourself.
Take notes about our podcast. And one of the things I said, this is literally what I said, Jesus, the female prosecutor.
Oh.
She pissed me off. God rest her soul. She passed away this year.
Right. So Frida Black, she actually passed away in July of this year. I've still not been able to find any cause of death, but she was 57 years old and
very young.
Found in her home. So why did you write that?
Well, look, I can tie it back to eccentricity. She was very odd. She's very odd. I understand that this is, the top edge of the Bible Belt. Right. But one of the things that, for those of you who've seen The Staircase, or even those of you who haven't, it becomes revealed that Michael is bisexual actively bisexual and had physical encounters with escorts and with other men, none of which I think are actually described as affairs. I mean, they try and describe it as affairs, but you don't really get the sense that there are emotional relationships that are happening. It's, a release for that part of his sexuality.
Right.
So there's a lot of questioning that goes on about what constitutes a healthy relationship. And that actually kind of pissed me off. As a marriage and family therapist, I'm telling you, look, there may be an accepted template for what is a healthy relationship out there in the world. It's like the heteronormative monogamous couple with 2.5 children in the white picket fence. And that doesn't exist.
No.
And that's always been a myth. And people have always managed aspects of their relationship for better or worse. I'm not saying that this was the way it should have been done, but there are a lot of indicators that the two of them had an understanding about the relationship. Right. And Frida is not having any of it. She comes across as very homophobic.
Well, I find it interesting. So they have her, as opposed to the male prosecutors, kind of take the lead on this topic.
Yeah.
That makes me think that the guys were like, oh, we don't want to talk about this. We don't want to cross-examine the male escort.
Yeah.
So she gets stuck with it.
Which is hilarious.
Or she decides, hey, I'll take it.
Well, it backfires on her big time.
Right.
Which is great. So just to give the description, and I'm not meaning this and saying this in a demeaning way, but here's a very talk about not understanding how you're presented. Severe looking woman with like a very severe contrast between her hair color and her sort of chalky white makeup and really thinly plucked eyebrows that kind of give her this ongoing surprised look. And then the eyeshadow. I mean, beyond what she was trying to portray Michael as with his gay porn and his contacting these escorts, none of that was more offensive than her eye makeup. It's pretty bad.
I mean, it is. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, we don't know anything about how she passed. That's too bad.
Nope.
And once again, like you were saying earlier, she was just doing her job. But it was another glaring example of where she really was letting a personal bias in. And I think, it was clear to me that she's being very careful when she's being interviewed about why she's concerned about it. I mean, she has a lot of judgment, just making blanket statements of this is not a healthy relationship and this is not. And normal people don't do this sort of thing. And you can tell that she's really put off by the pornography. Now, I can certainly understand that.
Right.
However, when the very, very charming, good-looking male escort who presents probably better than anybody in the entire documentary.
Best witness.
He's a fantastic witness.
He is great.
Down to earth, completely open about what he does, and she turns into a giggling 13-year-old girl.
Completely.
I mean, my mouth dropped open, and I thought, this is your job.
So she goes from asking him, what sort of sex acts would you perform with these? I mean, questions they wouldn't ask if it was a female escort at all. It's irrelevant anyway. I mean, if you're just saying sex acts, acts.
It was a means to, because, and this, you and I even talked about this in the prelim, we really got the impression that this was an approach. They didn't really have a lot because there was so much conflicting evidence that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So what we're going to do is we're going to go after his character.
Right. We're going to totally disgust the jury so that they demonize him.
Right.
And so she's very abrasive and inappropriate with her questioning. And then at some point she asks him, well, what kinds of clients have you had? Or someone, I think it was the defense attorney asks, what sort of occupations have your clients had? And he says, well, doctors, lawyers, one judge, and then says, not this judge, kind of makes a little joke on the stand, which is adorable.
Yeah.
And she just throws her head down on the table, mouth over her hands, giggling so hard, and just looks up at him like,
in a murder trial.
In a murder trial.
Yeah.
Right.
It was really badly done.
Yeah.
It was badly done.
Yeah. And there's just,
And they briefly interview, oh God, what was the lead attorney on the DA?
Hardin.
Yeah. It's clear. I mean, this is a typical, you couldn't find a more, especially in the light of what's going on right now in the government with the hearings for Supreme Court judge. He's a white guy with just absolutely sure of what he's talking about and has no problem with saying, well, this is what we're going to do.
Well, the piece that I was actually, listening to this on the way to work. I wasn't watching it. I was listening to it. But that stuck out to me to that very point is when they exhume the first woman's body, Elizabeth, and they're going to
which had been brought back from Germany
to Texas
to be buried.
So they exhume her body and they're going to bring it back to North Carolina. So the same medical examiner that said Kathleen died of homicide is going to examine this body to see what the cause of death was. He is so sure. He says, no, we haven't looked inside the casket yet, but we know that this is going to show that Michael has done this before. And it's that he's so sure because he told the medical examiner, hey, this is what you're going to find.
Yeah.
Right? Because we need this to help our case. So it's awful.
So, we touched on this earlier. This is again about the problem of how we get drawn into these fascinating stories and the way they're presented by a documentary crew. The purpose of the crew, of the director, his job, he is there to tell a story. So we as viewers are actually, although it feels very intimate and you're right there with the attorneys, you're right there with Michael and his family, we're actually not seeing that. What we're seeing is probably miles of footage.
Oh, sure. I think
thousands of hours.
I think 600 hours was
600,
not used.
not thousands.
Was not used.
Right, 600 hours. So, look, and you and I have worked in entertainment,
Sure.
in this manner. We've seen what an editor can do.
Right.
So you can change the tone of a story, which is a whole Making a Murderer, if that's the big controversy with what they've done.
Right.
And I want to keep that out there as like a possibility that, like, hey, I have to keep my mind open, that I'm not really, I am basing my judgment of this on a tertiary perspective.
Right.
It's not even secondary.
Version of something.
Exactly.
That we're being allowed to see, which is fascinating. The purpose was to look at an American criminal justice system, which I think it did very well.
Yeah.
But then we are now taking these leaps of guilt, innocence, corruption,
right?
All of that stuff. So,
but then, or should we talk about evidence or some of the things we were about the?
I think we should talk about the family members first, or just kind of family members in general, and going through criminal justice system. So, I think you and I had sort of professional experience in the sense of working with offenders post-incarceration.
Right.
We are constantly assessing and doing, at least weekly therapy with individuals. And we want to know about their home life. We want to know about their family structure. And we're constantly assessing that and keeping tabs on that because that can speak to risk if that changes or is it unstable. So we really got some good snapshots of what home life was like for convicted offenders, as well as we work very closely with probation and parole. And so those officers are actually going into the homes and telling us the things that we're not, when we get to see them in therapy for a week, that we're not, able to visually see. So we're getting a lot of collateral information about home life of individuals who have been through the criminal justice process. And so I think the thing that stands out in the documentary is the dying, devotion of these kids, the 4 kids, Clayton, Todd, Margaret, and Martha, to their dad's innocence.
Yeah.
Caitlin,
it's unwavering.
Yeah, it really is unwavering. Caitlin, the biological daughter of Kathleen, at some point after she learns about Michael's bisexuality and sees the autopsy photos, decides...
Or the crime scene photos, wasn't it? Or maybe both of the crime scene and the autopsy.
Yeah, probably all, okay. But it definitely autopsy.
It was the ones where they had taken the hair off and peeled the skull.
Yeah. So she ends up then, believing that he's guilty. But it is unwavering, and so much so that actually the Margaret and Martha had to sign off to have their mom's body exhumed. And they were like, of course, because it's going to show that Dad didn't do anything.
Right.
So whereas, that might be like, well, they could twist it however they want, which they did. They were just so, no, let's do it. Everything we can do to prove Dad's innocence, let's help and do it.
Well, one of the as a marriage and family therapist, my particular education was really very much focused on family systems, which is a perspective. There are many different types of family therapy, but family systems is sort of an umbrella term for looking at families as if it was a cybernetic. It is an emotional, familial, whether blood or not, system or group of individuals that are acting in a mechanical way. So you think of it as gears that interact with each other, and what happens is that people sort of are given roles, sometimes ones that they don't choose, they're forced into unconsciously, and they may rebel against those roles, but there's always just sort of this desire to return to homeostasis.
Right.
For better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely see this. I mean, we can see this, and I think this is sort of a commonality. Like you were talking about some of the probation officers going into homes and just being treated really horribly by the wives or the kids of the ex-cons.
Well, and it wasn't just because, you put us through all this, but they believe in the innocence of their spouse, plus how dare you drag us all through this criminal justice system? And they are indirect victims.
Right.
I mean, they're having to pick up pieces when that person goes to prison.
Right. And they have no place to put their anger. So who's going to be the easiest target in that situation? It's going to be the agent, the representation
of the government. Yeah.
So when we look at this, I mean, in the interview for the biological daughter, what was her name again?
I think Margaret.
Margaret.
The older one.
Yeah.
Redhead.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the biological daughter of the
I'm sorry, Caitlin.
Caitlin makes a turnaround and says, but I think she says something very telling. She says in that scene, this is not the Michael I knew. Right. The Michael I knew was a great father. He was this, he was this. And she just names off these positive qualities. And then she says, and yet it looks like there's a part of him that I didn't know. Which I think is really sad because, true or not, I think that she was influenced by the prosecution focusing on his sexuality. Right.
And her aunts also seem to have that perspective, which we're not going to spend a lot of time on because that's kind of its own thing. But and it's a way to, as a younger person to compartmentalize, right? Okay. Right. I'm being told he did this horrible thing, and this is my biological mom, and I'm going to, quote, choose her over him. But I'm going to make sense of it by saying, I saw all these wonderful things, but that's not the person that did this. When, if he is guilty, they are the same person.
Right.
Right.
Which is a possibility.
Sure.
It's absolutely a possibility.
Totally. But the owl did it.
Yeah. Let's talk about that real quick. So, it's been probably a year and a half, 2 years, maybe even longer since I heard the criminal podcast, Owl Theory.
Longer, yeah.
And then to watch this the first time, knowing that we were going to do one of our podcasts on it and trying to get all the information, and then going back and watching it the second time. And let me tell you, folks, the autopsy scene and the autopsy photos and the crime scenes are brutal.
Right.
But I'm telling you, you look at her skull, which
have lacerations.
Two things. One is there are lacerations. One of them absolutely looks like a raptor claw.
It's crazy. There are like 2 lines parallel to each other, and then a third one kind of up the middle.
Absolutely.
Like everyone put your finger up, like
it's
talons.
It's like a claw.
It looks exactly like that.
Absolutely like a claw. And then
we are not forensic experts.
I'm not a blood spatter expert at all, by any means.
Right.
I have watched every episode of Dexter, but
that counts.
But so that's one part of it. But then contrasting that is looking at the crime scene photos when they found her body, and it is such a brutal. Like, it's like you're going,
oh, yeah.
What happened?
They open with that, and I'm like, I don't need to see anymore. This guy's so guilty.
He's so guilty.
That's not a fall down the stairs.
And then, okay, so let's talk we won't spend too much time on this, but supposedly the weapon that was used, that Michael supposedly used, is what's called a blowpoke.
I hate that term, by the way. It's kind gross.
Sounds like a...
Yeah, well, I don't know.
We already know what it sounds like. But a blowpoke is basically a fireplace poker, but you can breathe into it in order to stir up the embers if you're going to, bank the fire a little higher or something. So there's controversy about that. Like, I don't even remember how it got named as the weapon, but they're like, it's the blowpoke. Where's the blowpoke? The blowpoke's missing. Well, it's missing, so that means it must be the weapon.
It's the murder weapon.
Once again, like you said, we see throughout this real evidence of the prosecution taking the wrong puzzle piece and trying to bang it into that puzzle space over and over again where it doesn't fit.
And I have to say, I feel like they're like, okay, Peterson did this. We have to make that fit. But I also feel like the defense said, no, he didn't. The explanation must be she fell down the stairs. We need to make that fit. And it doesn't work either for me. Even Dr. Henry Lee, when he does the examination, he's poking holes in the homicide piece, but he won't really go as far to say, yeah, she fell down the stairs and that's how she got this, which is absolutely what a competent scientist should do.
Well, okay, so sidebar on that.
Okay.
Henry, he's great.
He's the best.
That guy is fantastic. He's so smart, and yet they didn't put him on the stand. Why didn't they put him on the stand?
Because they're racist.
Because he's not camera friendly. He doesn't fit the mold of what they want. He has a strong accent.
The mock juries said they couldn't understand him.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, how horrible is that? Here's this guy that's a fantastic expert.
He is the leading expert in the world. I mean, it's nuts.
But we're not going to use him because of this. And one of the things, and we were in my living room just now using a foam muscle roller.
Like roller.
And I was like, okay, look, Shiloh, look. It's twice as long as this. Here they are in a butler pantry, servants staircase, narrow hallway, and you're supposed to tell me that this little guy was heaving back with the force needed to kill this person
with this long
blowpoke, and it's not going to hit the ceiling. You can see how low the ceiling is.
Yeah.
And then even that was the other thing. There's no skull fracture.
Off. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So he's supposed to have beaten his wife beaten her to death.
Right.
And there's no
skull fracture, just lacerations.
Just lacerations. Which means he would have been scraping her with... I'm sorry, I don't mean to make light of it because it's a horrible crime scene.
Right.
But that part just did not add up to me. Maybe he used something else. Maybe there was some other method, but it certainly wasn't the one they were trying to say it was.
Oh, he put on his raptor glove and then grabbed her by the head.
Yeah, that's it.
His Raptor Halloween costume. Well, so that's where it falls apart for me, is that it doesn't fit forensically. Okay. Let me back up. Were you going to say anything more about the blowpoke? Or was that it? I feel like I cut you off, but I can't remember.
It was not something we talked about, but it was something that I remembered, is that the blowpoke was eventually found in the additional episodes that they added. Right. And when they found it, it had no indicators. It was like stored in a odd place, I will say that. but it had not been touched in years, and it had no dents on it. It had no indications that it had been used to hit anything. So if something of that nature was used, it wasn't the weapon. It
kind of blows out that that's the weapon. I will say, clinical judgment is about 50-50. It's like a coin toss when we look at research as far as making clinical judgments about people or coming to conclusions. So we tend to have collateral information, research, data, testing available to us as psychologists. So that's what I always think about when I go back to all this of course, I'm sitting in my house speculating away and judging away, but if I watch something like this, but I always think, okay, if you were to ask me sort of my final impressions or what I think happened, my gut feeling, my clinical impression, if you will, he comes across as genuine, and I don't think that he did it from the footage that I'm seeing.
Oh, that's a good way to.
But then I go, okay, well, I need some science behind it. So then, okay, forensic evidence. The lack of skull fracture, to me, that's not a beating. The lack of skull fracture and no hemorrhaging in the brain, to me, doesn't mean it's a fall.
Right.
So neither of those fit. And then that also removes like an intruder theory as well, right? So if she was hit on the head with something else, there's still no skull fracture. So, that's where I turn to the owl theory, and I'm like, don't need a skull fracture or brain hemorrhaging to be attacked by an owl and bleed out.
Well, and also the idea that, and they talk about this in Criminal, the idea that if she was attacked by this predator owl with the raptor claws, that would have, there are tons and tons of head wounds bleed profusely because there's so much capillary and vein structure in the skin, that protects the skull. So that could easily account for, she runs in from the balcony with this bird attached to her, and she trips and falls down the stairs. And it suddenly makes sense. Oh, that's where all this blood comes from. And she's struggling so violently.
And she's intoxicated, under the influence of alcohol, Valium. So completely disoriented. I don't know. It makes sense. I feel like the other two just don't fit, and this could fit, I guess, is my best.
Yeah. So we have in this particular story, we have a lot of sadness. Here's a guy that if he, he's an elderly man now. That's something else that's really jarring, is that you forget when you're watching it, because the hairstyles and the clothes are somewhat modern. It's not really jarring. So it's easy to forget that it's 2001, it's 17 years ago.
Right.
And then as they're jumping in time, and then suddenly you jump to when Michael has been in jail for 6 years before they start the trial, and he can barely walk up the stairs, and he's just this, he's an elderly man. Man at this point.
You see how he loses size, and it's gray, and elderly, and then his kids have kids, and it's just really interesting to see that sort of entire family structure age. Anything final? I have one final tip at the end of this, but
well, I was just going to say that and these are people who are still alive, but once again, Michael's ex-wife, the mother of his two biological sons, is so strange.
Oh yeah, we need to get back to her a little bit.
It's almost worth watching to hear the cadence of her speech. This is a person who doesn't, this is what it was, Charlotte, this is what it is. She doesn't use contractions.
I know.
It's the oddest thing. If I were to be in that situation, I would not be able to, it's this very stilted, robotic.
She uses like automobile.
Automobile,
yes. Car or auto.
Now, she may be an elementary school teacher teaching English to bilingual children.
I thought that too, but she's teaching on the military base, and I think I assumed it was all Americans. I could totally be. And I thought that too, like, okay, is she teaching to German kids?
But I have two sisters who were elementary school teachers for a combined total of probably 55 plus years between their careers. They don't talk like that.
Yeah.
So,
and it's multiple times.
Odd.
I mean, there's a sentence that's like, I got into the automobile because and then went to the gymnasium, and then we get back into the automobile. Like, it is very strange. And she's talking to Americans.
Yeah. And his sons, who dote on him, they have some very, what we would say, Todd especially. Todd's the younger son, right?
Correct.
Okay, so Todd, in terms of like there's a term we use when we're doing psych evaluations, when you don't necessarily say in a psychological evaluation that the person is, we talk about their hygiene, we talk about their grooming, but if someone has, pretty great facial symmetry and takes care of themselves, you don't say, click, click, good looking. Right. You say well-formed. He is a well-formed individual. And he comes across with somewhat of a constricted affect. Mm-hmm. And constricted means not... do you want to talk about blunted versus constricted?
Oh,
it's a difficult distinction, but constricted means you are controlling the emotions that you are experiencing. Blunted means that you are somewhat...
you sort of just have that turned off.
It's turned off or muted, like anger through a cushion.
Yes.
In a way.
Okay.
But constricted means that this is someone who is having a very broad or very intense emotional experience internally. And as they're talking to you, they are really controlling it. And he comes off that way. I
interpret that as he's really uncomfortable with the cameras.
Well, he was, but he was also kind of saucy with the judge to the point where he got admonished by the judge, where the judge said, I don't appreciate your laughing or something like that.
Right.
So, but at that point,
that could be a defense mechanism.
It could be a defense mechanism. It could also be, screw all of you, my dad's innocent. I'm not going to put up with this crap, which is something that a 24-year-old at that time would probably have the, it comes from a well-to-do family and feels like my dad's innocent and feels, justified.
They're an interesting bunch.
Very interesting bunch of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, you think of all of the trauma and loss that those kids have suffered through in so many different ways, and I really feel for all of them. And
well, it's traumatic. It's absolutely traumatic, and I hope all of them. And Michael is a cipher to me to some extent, but for his children, I hope that they were able to get the support and help that they need. Certainly.
Right. So my final tip, coming away from all this,
what's that?
Never marry a Peterson. Whether it's a Scott, a Drew, or a Michael, don't do it.
Isn't that crazy?
I know. All right, so that wraps up that part of the episode. We are going to do our giveaway drawing
Cool. Yeah, we talked about that. Did you do that on? What did you announce that on Instagram, or we did it last one? Last episode?
So. No, I announced it on all of our social media. So we have all the names in a little fedora hat right here.
I know. That's the one. That's Dr. Alexandra.
What is this?
Our other colleague calls it my douche hat.
How dare she? Hi, Alex. Okay, so this is for, as you can see, I'm wearing my LA County Coroner's T-shirt that I just bought.
Did you see what was in the...
Oh, your pen! Oh my gosh, that's 10 years old.
You gave this to me 10 years ago. It's an ink pen with the top of it's a body outline.
This is the coolest pen. So I brought one of these home back to the office for my boss.
Oh, cool!
And just put it on his desk and didn't say anything.
That's what you did to me. Just left it on my desk.
God, I'm so creepy.
You're such a weirdo. You're like a cat bringing dead things.
Yes. So I recently took some colleagues over to the LA County Coroner's office to show them the gift shop because they had no idea about it. It's this really cool old building, and I know I shared a lot of this on Instagram, but it's worth going over there. The gift shop is called Skeletons in the Closet.
Oh, cool.
And they actually have a new chief medical examiner who does not like all of the body outline what would you call it?
Logos,
merchandise, and the logo that they use. So if you can get over there to get any of it, get it, because they're gonna phase it all out.
Maybe that's why we can make some money. We can go buy it all and put it on eBay.
There you go. So I special ordered in their last batch of beach towels, one of their body outline beach towels, and picked up a T-shirt because it has a body outline on the back.
The logo on the T-shirt is really cool. It's because it's on the chest. Pocket, there's a round logo that has a caduceus, the scales of justice, Erlenmeyer flask, a microscope, and what's the other one there in the lower left? What do you think that is? Kind of looks like a bomb.
Yeah, it does, but I think it's another like beaker.
Like a flask, a beaker or something. Yeah.
So when I went and picked up my beach towel, I finally came in. They gave me a little free gift of a little notebook and pen. They both have the body outline logo on them. So we decided that we would raffle it off to one of our followers on social media. So I'm going to shake up the hat. Do you want to pick it?
I'm going to stir it even more. Okay, who have we got here? All right.
So I put before their handle, I put whether it was off of Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. So.
Oh, cool. So from Facebook, we have Madeline Kopp.
Yay! Ooh, what a cool
Madeline.
name.
We love the name, actually. Yeah, cool.
So DM us, Madeline, and we will get that sent out to you. Send us an address. Congratulations. You got a little swag. So last, I just want to, again, today we are obviously recording. And then a few days, I'm so excited because we're going to be recording with Bryce and Tammy from Hollyweird. I was going to say Hollyweird, Not So Paranormal. That's what you guys need to name your podcast. Hollyweird Paranormal.
They're awesome.
They're amazing. We have a really exciting collaboration coming up for you guys that will be released at the end of October. So this episode you're listening to now will be released early October. But we're so excited. We'll probably do a little Instagram live so you guys can check that out. But
yeah, I actually can't. I hope, even if you're not particularly into paranormal phenomena, which I am, I'm a complete, Mulder geek here. I really strongly encourage everyone to go over and please give them a listen, because I have so much respect for them. They're super young and hip, or they're young and super hip, and they have. Tammy uses the greatest term because just, I guess, what the kids are saying these days. It's like, we got the receipts. We got the receipts. They research everything to the absolute extent. They are open to the idea of phenomenon in the same way that I am. You'll even get to know some weird stuff about me and some experiences I've had over the years.
We'll share all that.
We'll share those things, but they'll be the first ones in the middle of their research to go, okay, this is the legend, this is the myth, here's the truth.
Right.
Here is what the facts are. And sometimes it's congruent and sometimes it's wildly incongruent. Mm-hmm. And I have the utmost respect for that. I think it's so cool.
And I recently posted something on Twitter of just a huge congratulations to them, because their hard work really shows. And if you guys can, they've been invited to the Pasadena Playhouse to do 2 live shows on October 30th and 31st. They're going to follow a play, The Woman in Black, and do a live show. So they talked about the Pasadena Playhouse in one of their episodes as being one of the most haunted theaters, and the theater contacted them and said, you are absolutely correct. So come on down. So that's huge, and we're so proud of them and really excited for our collaboration.
It should be a great play too. So if you're local, please look it up. I mean, and if you're not local, check out their podcast. What else? Oh, some other things we've got in the works, which are very exciting. We're looking to travel in the next few months, next 6 to 8 months. We're looking at a big podcast convention.
Podcast festival, the True Crime Podcast Festival. We will be there in Chicago in July. Yeah. So we will definitely have a meet and greet set up. So please come out, and
we'll have swag. We
will. If we want to do some swag that no one else has, if you guys have ideas of what you would actually like for podcast swag, let us know. We want to think outside the box a little bit for you guys, and we have lots of time to plan. So
think outside the body line. Yeah.
think outside the body chalk line. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we, of course, you can follow us on our social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. But
please consider going over to iTunes and giving us a rating.
That would be great. You know what I want to see is some more ratings. I love reading the descriptions. I feel like I've read the ones that are up there so many times. I'm like, oh, when is there going to be a new one? And I just love it when there's a new one. They're the best.
Yeah, we really like that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. We will see you next time on LA
Not So
Confidential.
Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.